You're listening to the Modern Healthcare Back Office, a podcast dedicated to solving the billing issues and gridlock facing the healthcare industry, presented by ProChamp, hosted by Chuck Ellis and Rachel Schools.
Well, hey there, folks. Chuck here, and welcome to another episode of the Modern Healthcare Back Office. I am joined, as always, by my amazing co-host, Ms. Rachel Schools. How are you, Rachel?
I'm amazing today, Chuck. Am I allowed to say it again? We're surviving Mercury retrograde, so It's great.
No,
great.
I heard about this Queen concert where they spilled sports drinks all over the stage and Mercury was in Gatorade, but that was a different thing altogether. So anyway, we are joined today by Tina Ratliff. Hey, Tina, how you doing today?
I'm doing good.
Tina, what we want to know is your background and your deepest, darkest secrets. How did you end up here?
Where did you come from?
I want you to go all the way back. I'm not kidding. Take me to high school and tell me how you landed
That's
here.
where I started. Funny enough is I was 17 when I got into this business. Got into 17. I was a manager at a potato place in the mall. And I really wanted to do something that I would enjoy. And I had a friend who had just gotten this great job doing DME intake. And the person who was working with her had just gotten fired. And she said, "Hey, I think I can get you on here." And I was like, awesome. And so I interviewed and they gave me a shot, even though I didn't have a bit of experience in the world. And I started working there and worked in the same business ever since.
Tell me about a day in your life at 17 in the DME office.
So I was taking referrals, and I remember one that made me go, you know what? I really like this job. I really want to, work in these pharmacies with patients and help people. And I got a referral for a girl who was the same age as me. At the time, I had a very young son. He was a baby, and she had a baby the same age as me, and she was terminal, and I really got to know her because I talked to her quite a bit. And she's like, "Oh, I'm so thankful that this medical equipment's coming because I'm having such a hard time." I thought, man, we're really helping people, really hard times of their life. And I just knew that I was going to love it at that point. And so I took intake orders, I keyed in patients, I learned all about the things that we were delivering. I went in there not knowing anything. Basically, I took it upon learn as much as I could. And I just kept going from there. So I pretty much stayed in HME for a little bit till I was I think I was 25 when I transitioned over to Infusion.
So what did you think? What was your first impression of Infusion when you
I was
walked
terrified.
in?
And it got dropped in my lap. So I actually was working at a pharmacy who was starting to do DME, and they wanted me to do all the DME intake and billing, the whole cradle to grave process. And so I was in there doing that. And the second day I was there, I could really tell that the girl that did Infusion that was sitting in the same office with me was not happy. I don't know if it's because I was there but she never came back to work again. And so my boss came down and said, and now I've been there all of 2 days, says, "Can you bill Infusion?" And I said, "Do you have any kind of reference manuals that I can, if you have some reference manuals, I can figure it out." And this is back before Google. So that would have been literally all I had pretty much. Just back in the AOL days.
Trial by fire.
Yeah.
What year are we talking about here?
50 now. 25 years ago.
See, when I entered, Tina, we totally had, it was the beginning of the internet. I was just the only one taking advantage of it.
Yeah, we were too.
But I had the Google, and I'm trying to imagine a life where I literally would have to request manuals and books.
Yes, we had binders, giant binders that were 6 inches thick, they were enormous. And he gave me these binders. What they were about was the software we were working on. It wasn't about what you actually put into the software. So it was fun. I learned a lot, and a lot of it was by trial and error because I really had no other choice. So Infusion kind of got to me. And I was scared because it's very complicated to bill. You're talking about drugs and milligrams and a lot of math, which I was not a fan of.
And there's something about the order of billing too. It's not even just this infusion is this compound of drugs. Isn't there something to the way that it's positioned on the claim?
Yes. And back then it was a lot different. Coding was different. This was even prior to per diems, the S codes and things. So this was a long time ago. And yeah, it was very different. But you had to manually calculate things. You didn't have the system. The systems weren't great at doing that for you back then. So you had to know all that stuff. And I had to learn some of that stuff the hard way. Just trial and error. Lots of error. Figured it out. And so that's what's important.
So take us on some more of your journey, because your background is incredibly rich. It's extensive. It's exciting. I know didn't you have a billing service?
Yeah. While I was working in the same pharmacy that I started doing infusion in, I was in real contact a lot with the software company. And sometimes, just because it's hard when you're a biller and you're really busy, take your time out of your day and call them and wait and have them get in your computer, and before you know it, an hour and a half is gone. So what I started doing was really paying attention to how they fix things. And I started, if I had someone else had that error come up, I could fix it. Or if I had it again, I could fix it.
Did you do it because you looked at what went right? Can I ask, does that make sense?
I do that whenever, like if I need to write a SQL code, I'll look at a SQL code that I already know what it does, and then sometimes I can tweak it to do what I want it to do. So that's kind of take if I'm trying to write a query code or an update statement. For that stuff, I just made this like beautiful notebook for myself of this is how I have fixed everything that's come down the pike so far.
Was it like a grid? I'm trying to get in your brain.
No.
How did you have it laid out for yourself?
It was literally Word.
Oh my gosh.
And that was another thing too. I had to learn Excel. I had to learn all of these programs that I had never, working in the food business, you never touch that stuff. I got into it. I really, really pushed myself. That's one thing about me is when I become interested in something, I want to know everything about it. And I will, within a week, have picked it apart and know everything about it. That's just like part of my personality.
I'm the same way because I like to read a lot. So I will get lost in some topic, and then my whole family, we're going to go on a rabbit hole right now. My whole family is lost for a week. They're like, what did we just do? What did you just, I'm like, I just learned, I don't know, throw it out there. Neuroscience.
Yeah. I also did sleep studies too for a little while. When I was in HME, one of our referral sources who worked at a sleep lab here outside of Nashville, she said, oh, I hate to tell you, but I'm leaving. And I was like, you are? I'm so sad. And she said, listen, would you want to do sleep studies? And I said, oh, I didn't go to school for that. And she's like,
you did them?
Yes, I did them. Yeah.
Like I would come in,
I would put the electrodes on your scalp and hook you up and everything. Yeah. And score your sleep study.
Oh.
But that's probably one of my accomplishments that I'm most proud of, is that she said, oh, no, don't worry about it. I can train you. So I wasn't registered. I never took the test. Kind of think pharmacy, you can be a tech and learn things, or you can do that and then go to school and take a test, and then you're a registered tech. So it was kind of the thing with polysomnographs, like you can learn and then later on you get registered if you want to. So she brought in because we didn't have any patients yet. It was a brand new sleep lab. So she brings all her books in, and I sit down and I start going through them and studying them, and I studied, and then I had her come in as like a mock patient, and I set her up, I did her sleep study, I learned to score them, and then I started doing real sleep studies on real patients. So it was pretty interesting, and I was really proud of that. So when people say, hey, what's your greatest accomplishment? And I say, I taught myself to read brainwaves.
That is a very cool accomplishment. I can say I don't have that one. But I can read energy. I can't read brainwaves though. But it's not the same thing.
I feel like you can teach, and that's what I feel too. You can teach yourself anything.
Anything.
You can learn anything you want to learn, as long as you apply yourself and you really want to learn it.
Yeah, it just takes effort. And
Today, Tina, I want you to teach us, okay? Let's say you walk it. We didn't make it all the way to your billing service, but I want to get into some good content. So I want you to teach me, if I was coming in and somebody threw infusion at me. Tina, let's say you win the lottery tomorrow and you say, I'm not doing any of this infusion stuff anymore, and somebody were to come over to me and say, here you go. What in the world? Where do you start to go in and holistically look at something and come up with a plan to clean it up? Walk me through a logical approach to that analysis.
So if you were just to walk into, let's say, a pharmacy that was already had a running billing office and then everybody was gone and it's Rachel.
It's mine. I need to know how to do everything and understand what's up with everything and quickly come up with some sort of a plan.
So the first thing you have to do, so let's say there's other people there and you're managing it and you got to shape it up, right? So the first thing, and this is what I do now, it might be different for different people depending on how your brain works, but the first thing that I do.
I want your brain.
Okay.
Your brain.
So the first thing I do is I have to discover where the bottlenecks and the issues are. It's the first thing I have to do. I have to sit with people, I have to watch them work. You got to get in the weeds with them, watch them work, ask them why they do things instead of saying, oh, you shouldn't do it that way. It's harder. You always want to ask, how come you do it that way? Just curious, how come you do that way?
I'm over here cheering.
Because sometimes there's a reason in their mind that they're doing it.
Yeah.
And you can explain better. People don't really like change, especially with things that they're doing constantly all day. And they've got it down pat and they know and they're in a routine. And when you come in there and throw a wrench in that and go, okay, now you're going to start doing it this way. You just can't approach those type of people like that. And there's one in every office.
Nope. You've almost got to make them think it's their idea. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes your best way is not right.
What you do is explain to them look at the outcome.
Yeah. What's going to happen? What's going to happen or what does happen? Let it happen.
And then when you
you
explain your way of doing it, you have to explain why. I do it this way because this is the outcome I get, right? It's easier, it's faster, and it's more accurate, let's say. So you have to explain why you do it the way you do for somebody to go, okay, that makes sense. But if you just say, I do it this way, we should probably do it this way, that's not as meaningful. So that's another thing I also do.
I learned that lesson the hard way, right? Like, I always think my ideas are best, Tina. It's just, and yeah.
You have to sell them.
It doesn't work well when you just say, you can't just say, do it this way because I said to, but I have said that many times.
I mean, there is a time where it comes down to this is the way we're going to do it, but it's all about the delivery of how quickly you can get everybody on board.
Yep. So you do that, like, what's the approach? So it's probably process by process or team by team, because obviously you can't take on everything all at once, right?
You have to take it. So once I find out all of my issues, then I prioritize them. Which one's going to get me the biggest bang for my buck? Or which one has to come before another one because it affects that, right? So I get my plan together of which issues I'm going to address first. Now, and so issues as well, it's not always about saying, okay, here's how we're going to do this process and then let everybody go. You also have to go back and check and make sure that's really happening, not just like a day or two later, or do a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later. Is everybody still following this process? Because
really a day.
You got to keep on, because sometimes they'll do it for a while and then they're like, oh, I'm going to go back to my old comfortable way. I don't want to do it this way. So you really got to watch, because that has bitten me quite a few times where I'm like, oh, look at them. They're all doing it the same way.
You're like,
someone
veers on board.
Yeah.
We didn't get the memo that we were changing course. So we had another conversation with Melissa Wagner on the HME side, and I asked her a similar question, but what I asked her was, what was her favorite process? What is your favorite?
I would have to say, billing.
Really? I totally thought it was I pegged you for a cash posting level.
The constant same thing over and over again it really does my head in. But some people love that. Like, our cash posters love cash posting. That's what they want to do. They love it. But I can't, just because I have to, everything I do, the next thing I like it to be different than the thing I just did.
So talk to us about billing. Let's say you're going to go fix some billing issues. What is that? How do you approach it? What are you looking for?
So usually, if I'm looking to see if I have any billing issues, of course I'm going to like trend denials and things like that and see so I can get the most bang for my buck. Because if I find out that a certain payer isn't paying for let's say a certain drug, they're not paying it according to contract, then I know I can go and run a revenue for this drug and go back, and I might have a lot of money just sitting there that I can get with a provider relations rep with a spreadsheet and say, hey, all these are underpaid, and get quite a bit of money with not having to call on every single claim because I know what's wrong with them already. So that's what I usually look for, is big problems that I can hurry up and turn around.
And fix on the front end,
correct,
right?
Fix them, whatever I have to do. If I'm working AR, get with a provider rep. I try to do those types of things where I can grab as much as possible, quick as possible.
Got it. So step 1 in billing is look at what's not being paid and figure out how to bring that to resolution.
Right. And sometimes you
ASAP.
find that it's a training thing. So you find that sometimes, oh gosh, the other biller is billing the wrong code for this. And you got to nip that in the bud, because it's never going to stop if you don't tell them. They just don't know any better. So things like that, you can find things like that by really watching that, denials and things like that.
What else would I look at?
I always look at my contracts. I always make sure that my contracts are in my billing software. A lot of times that it makes it a lot easier for your auto prices thing. My thing is, I don't want to key things. I don't want to type things into claims, and I pretty much can have gotten my system to where I don't have to do that if I bill. So at all just populates in for me. So just by having like really good contracts and having those in my software, that's the biggest thing, probably software wise, to help a biller.
For those of us, me pointing at myself, that don't know what a contract is, right?
Yeah.
I'm glad you said
I was
something.
waiting on Chuck. I
was like, I'm too far in this conversation, I'm afraid to ask.
No.
Yes, please.
So tell us, Tina, about a contract.
So your contract is your arrangement with your payer. So basically, you're going to find out what all is billable and not billable that you provide to the patient. How much are they going to pay for each of those things? Do they require authorization for all those things? Is there anything that you have to bill with a special code or a modifier or some type of other information? That contract, if you load all those things in your billing system, then you don't really have to remember that. Most systems will kind of take care of all that for you. You'll go to create a claim, it'll put the right code in there, it'll calculate and put the right price in there, it'll add your modifier, it'll do all those things for you. So that's what a contract is, and that's the benefit of putting it on there.
So it's like rules, it's modifiers, it's what do you guys call them in Infusion?
Codes?
I was going to say
Yep.
HIC-PIC, but I wasn't. I didn't want to sound silly. So it's basically combined with so the point is, on my order, it's basically ready to bill. I'm just making sure it's qualification guidelines before I hit go.
Right. Yeah.
Cool.
And you'll know that it
Makes
will
sense.
if you have that stuff auto-populating. Does that make sense? So because you set it up,
Yeah.
you basically, your contract is like, and your system is, you're taking your best biller's brain and you're putting it into the computer. So all those decisions are already made in there. So that's super helpful. You're faster. There's not as much human error. You're not typing things. So that's one thing that I would have if I was billing.
I know we're kind of winding down on time, and I wanted to float an idea by both of you. What if next time, Tina and Chuck, what if we go on a trip and take a look at the top 5 reasons that infusion claims aren't paid, or something along those lines? Could you take us on such a journey?
Absolutely.
Ooh.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I love learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No, wonderful. Again, Tina, thank you so much for joining us on the show. Where can people find you, follow you if they have any questions and want to reach out?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm there.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to reach me on there, they can.
Okay. We'll make sure to link to your
Follow
LinkedIn
me on
page.
LinkedIn.
Yeah. Follow us all on LinkedIn. We're
Yeah,
all there.
all of
You're
us.
there too. If you're listening to this podcast,
I think I'm the only
pretty sure
one
you have a
that's-
LinkedIn.
I'm the only one that's posting, though. I'm going to need Tina and Chuck. I'm going to
Uh-oh.
need some help.
I'm getting called out. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Follow
that is
us
going to
on
happen.
LinkedIn.
Follow us on LinkedIn and be sure to, if you're watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you for listening. If you're listening on the podcast app, please go over to Apple Podcast and 5 stars if you really enjoy what we're doing, because that'll help other folks find this show and get the help that we're putting out there. Again, thank you so much for listening to the Modern Healthcare Back Office. I'm Chuck Ellis. That's been Rachel Schools. And again, thank you, Tina, for being on the show today. We will see you in the next episode. Take care.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to the Modern Healthcare Back Office, a presentation of ProChant, a wholly owned revenue cycle management service dedicated to serving HME, pharmacy, infusion, and other healthcare providers. Learn more about us at prochant.com.